All right, and we're back, and it's COMP2068, Advanced Web Programming, and it's the winter 2016 semester, and it's week 3, lesson 3, part 1. We just kind of finished doing our tests, a little quiz that we had from last week. I want to go over a couple things before we start, and I'm going to go into our Blackboard here for a second. So let's go into home here for a second. Yay. So I got a couple of things going on. I want to mention them to you. We're going to talk about this stuff today, and we're also going to review the stuff we did last week a little bit. So I've got assignment number 1. It's up. We're going to talk about it in the later part of this course. We're going to talk about it, right? Or this day. Part 1 is due next week, right? Part 1, and it's due next week by midnight. So Wednesday by midnight, we'll talk about what you need to do there. This assignment will be broken up into 2 weeks. Where the other week, so 2 weeks from now, on February 10th, on the Wednesday, will be the final part to this one. So you have 2 weeks to do this thing. Part 1 next week for this one, and we'll talk details. Site map for your site. We'll talk about how to make that for me. Set up your site structure. Put it up on GitHub. Deploy to Azure. Right? That's what I want to be done for next week. Give me your GitHub link and give me a link to your live service, whether it's Azure or Heroku. 5% for next week if you get that done. Okay? So that's one part. 5% of the 15% for this assignment. This assignment is worth 15% of your final mark. All right, so it's kind of a heavier assignment. And we're going to be talking about stuff to get you guys going today. How to set up Express. We talked about a little bit about Node last week. We'll talk more about Express this week, and I'll talk about Express again next week to get you guys into doing things. So that's due. We'll talk about that. I'm also going to be asking you to do a lab number 2, which is due tonight at midnight, right? And what I'm going to ask you to do is deploy a simple web project to GitHub and sign up for Microsoft Azure if you haven't done it already, right? Follow the videos that we made to create a web app, because we did a whole web app last week and how to deploy that. And then go to publishing and complete the auto deployment steps with GitHub if you haven't had a chance to do that. And then give me the link to your GitHub link for that web project, a link for your live site on Microsoft Azure, so whatever your website's called, mywebsite.azurewebsites.net. And please note that you have to test your live site and that the index.html or in your case, the server.js, let me just update this for you.
Use.
I know I suck.
It's good, totally reason.
Let me just go in there and change this. So on the bottom is you have to make your server.js, right? Server.js is exposed in the root folder. So if you don't have your server.js exposed in the root folder, it won't deploy. Remember we had that problem last week, right? So if you don't deploy it with server.js, right? So so that's due by tonight at midnight. All right. You can do it by end of class. You can do it as we're talking. All right. Whatever you want to do. It's your little lab and it's practice for you because you're going to need it for next week. So I'm kind of paying for it twice, right? I'm paying you for it this day, and you also get for the same, almost the exact same kind of work next week, right? For your Express portfolio website. Right, so I'm getting you to practice today, and then actually do it officially for your 5% next week. All right. Now you may say, well, it's easy to do, right? Okay. Check out your Azure. Make sure it works. Make sure you have nothing to do. All that kind of stuff. Because this morning's class, I'll tell you, even if they signed up last week and we did all these steps, they got to sign up again today, right? Which hopefully won't happen to you, right? So please check to see that that's not the case. And if it is, there's ways to fix it. We're going to talk about that a little bit today, but for the most part. Your task, your mission, whether you choose to accept it or not, is to get it done by tonight. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about that when I get to it. But in the beginning, what I want to talk about is review some of the stuff we discussed about TypeScript and JavaScript, because a lot of the stuff we're doing is JavaScript, right? One of the questions I asked about is functions on your test, right? And I said there's 2 types of functions, right? 2 approaches. The named function and the anonymous function. We're going to see the anonymous function being used a lot more when it comes to callbacks with Node.js, right? Callback functions. And there's a lot of callback functions that we use with Node.js all the time, right? So this anonymous function declaration here is what we're going to be using, right? So just for our purposes today, let's kick off a brand new file, right? And let's do it from scratch so that I give you guys practice again. And hey, this could be the one that you deploy for your lab, right? So it's kind of like if you follow along and do what I'm telling you and deploy this for your lab, you're done and you get your 2%, which makes up for, I know, it's shocking, right? Shocking that I can tell you this stuff. You're getting free marks again, right? Who knows? This is almost like giving you to do like you know, a copyright statement that you get points for on every page. Every page you do a copyright, you get a point, right? It's crazy. Let's do this again. So I'm going to do this. I know it's crazy and I sound excited, but truly this is like the silliest, easiest thing you could possibly do if, and this is the proviso, you're set up correctly, right? If you're not set up correctly, it's a pain in the ass, right? I don't have to say it any other way, right? But let's check this out. So we're going to set up a new folder on the desktop. Let's do this together, gentlemen and ladies, right? So I'm going to go in here and on my desktop, or you can put it wherever you like, I'm going to create a folder. Now this is assuming that your system in front of you is completely set up with Node.js, NPM, Bower, all the other stuff we did over the last couple weeks. You might not be set up because you're sitting in a different spot, and I'm sorry for that, right? Nothing I can do there. But if you're not set up for this kind of stuff, then you're going to have to kind of follow along and do it some other time, right? Because I've already gone through videos and videos of this stuff, right? All right, so let's talk about this. So we're going to go to the lesson today, which is COMP2068, and we're going to call this lesson 3, right? Because that's the lesson 3 we're going to make. So here's lesson 3. Yay. All right, and we're going to just pull this into Visual Studio Code. I'm using Visual Studio Code. Now, for the most part in this course, I highly recommend it. Who's using anything else? And I know in first class I asked the question. There was other people using Dreamweaver and all stuff, but they weren't doing Node. Is anyone else using anything else in this class other than Visual Studio Code, right? Okay, you may not want to put up your hand because you're afraid too, right? That could be the answer, right? But if you are, it's okay. I don't care, right? I'm not going to force you to use Visual Studio Code. This is your development environment. You make it work for you. If you want to use Visual Studio, and a lot of people like using, you know, the big, powerful Visual Studio with 70 million lines plus, right? Go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. And if you want to use Dreamweaver for whatever reason with Node, go ahead. I don't know how that would work properly, but okay. And if you like using brackets because you like brackets more than Visual Studio Code, and you want to use something like automation or Cloud9, who's using Cloud9? Maybe there's someone who's going to use Cloud9 in the course who can't make their computer in front of you work, right? Cloud9 is a great alternative if you can't make your stuff work. That's okay. I'm not going to force you to use a particular IDE. But if you're using Visual Studio Code, you're going to set up your project like this. One thing to note before I continue with this is I talked about automation, and we might get there. If you're going to use Cloud9 or some other IDE, text editor, whatever, example brackets, and you want to auto or transpile, right, somewhat similar to what we do here in Visual Studio Code, you can set up kind of a task runner, and there's a couple of programs that can help you. One of them is called Gulp, right? Gulp.js is a Node module. So if I was to look at this as an example, if I go to try it now, or docs, let's go to docs to see if it actually works for me today. I've just got like wonderful, that's good. You install Gulp in the global namespace again using NPM, right? So that's where you would do it. And then from there, what you do with this, and there's some instructions on how to do this. I can't go over it today. I will hit it at some point in the course. You can create a task runner that watches all your TypeScript files, and when any TypeScript file is changed, it transpiles automatically, right? So that's a pretty cool option as opposed to using you know, kind of Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B on a Mac, right, to kind of transpile with Visual Studio Code. And it also works with something like Cloud9. So you can set up a task runner with Cloud9, and now everything is auto compiling, if you will, on save because you're watching certain files. So take a look at Gulp. There's some really good tutorials out there that'll help you in that workflow. But that's an opportunity for you. And the older one that you might also see out there is called Grunt, right? So Grunt is another task runner that you can set up. Grunt, very popular. It was there before Gulp, and it's very similar to what we did in Visual Studio Code. We set up a task runner, and then again, you'd have to run it on the command line. So you run it one time every time you save. So if you're using Cloud9 or brackets and doesn't support transpiling in the IDE, you can run Gulp or Grunt and then do all your transpiling for you. If you try and do it by hand, like if you try and do TSC space and the name of your TypeScript file, that's okay for now, but in the future we're going to have like 20, 30 TypeScript files or whatever it's going to be, right? And that's going to be a real pain in the ass for you. And if you change one, you don't change the other one, then you'll get really weird errors because then your JavaScript file didn't update, one of them didn't update, and it's the old file. So that's why I recommend you do it. It's a little better that way. Okay, well let's get back to what we're doing. And I'm assuming that most of you are using Visual Studio Code or a compatible IDE. All right, so here we go. So I've kind of got this blank space, and remember what we did last time. I need a server.js file, right, for us to do things with Node, right? So let's set up this new file. that we're going to call server.js, right? But we're not going to call it server.js. We're going to call it server.ts, right? Because we're doing a TypeScript file. So knowing that we're going to set up a TypeScript file and we're going to set up a node environment, that's the first file I want to set up. Even if it's empty like this, it's okay. Leave it empty. Next, let's set up a new file called tsconfig.json. There we go. tsconfig.json has to have 2 curly braces, right? And when we press Control Space, we choose compiler options. And then we choose target, which we make ES5. And then we choose module, right? Which you choose common.js. This is our tsconfig.json file. And then the last option is map, which we use source map is equal to true. There we go. So I've got my tsconfig.json. That is the compiler options when I transpile from JavaScript into from TypeScript into JavaScript. Okay, I need this one. I need a couple other ones too, right? I'll wait till you guys are finished typing this one. And this should be something that you should be used to doing by now because we've done it a couple times at least, right? So if I ask you to do this on a test, if I say, what files do you require to transpile TypeScript into JavaScript? This would be one of them, right? There's another one too, right? Which we'll talk about in a second. If I was to transpile now, if I press Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B on the Mac now, I would get a task runner notification. I would get something like this, no task runner configured. And that is the next option you have to fix in using Visual Studio Code. I'm going to click Configure Task Runner. And it's going to give me all this gobbledygook. I'm going to just kill this piece here, right? I want to kill, for now, all of these comments because I don't need them. Now, in order for this to work, the way I'm showing you, you have to have a version of TypeScript on the command line configured at least 1.5 and higher. If you have something like 1.030 or something weird like that, it will not work, no matter what you do. And we've talked about that at length. So we're just going to do this and kill this. And do all this. And here's where we make a change. We're going to kill the hello world piece. There is no hello world.ts. We're just going to get rid of this. You could specify server.ts, but we don't need to. Get rid of all this, and we'll see the final version. This is what the final version of your task runner is going to look like. This, and save. So my task runner is set up, and this is what your task runner should look like. Please make yours look like mine. And if you missed the other file, let me pull that one up too. How do I split screen with Visual Studio Code? What do I do? There's a button right here to split screen. So if I split screen and I choose this one and I click on tsconfig, those are the 2 files you need. One is tsconfig.json and the other one is the task runner, which is going to be with inside the .vs code folder. Is this new to anybody? Right? Please say it's not new, right? If it's new to somebody, make an appointment because you and I have to have a serious talk, right? It means you're not paying attention, you're playing video games. Something's going on in the class because we've talked about this a bunch of times and I can't go back and re-explain all this stuff. All right, so we got this stuff here, this tsconfig.json and task.json. I need these 2 things to transpile. Let's try transpiling now by pressing Control-Shift-B on the Windows machine and Command-Shift-B on the Mac. If I'm correct, when I transpile, I get 3 files, a JavaScript file that's empty, a TypeScript file that's empty, and a server.js map file that's got some stuff in it. If you don't get these 3 files, something's not right with your system. I feel like a computer. Okay, cool. So we've got that stuff going on. I'm going to just kill these things here. So I'm going to just close these up because you got them already. I want to configure Bower because we're going to do a lot of our work with Bower, right? And TSD. So let's do that. So first Bower. So I'm going to right click here and add a new file. And I want to tell Bower to go to something called reconfigure Bower. So I'm going to do a bower.bower.rc file. And I'm going to type in, again, these open braces. And I'm going to start typing directory. And instead of it going to Bower components, all my new Bower, my front end dependencies, I'm going to make them go to scripts lib, which you've seen before too. Right, so you need that. I don't have a scripts lib folder yet, but I will. All right. So all my Bower dependencies are going to go there. If I need anything front end, right? Okay, I don't have anything front end yet, but if I do, this is where they're going to go. And that means for anything like Angular, if I'm going to do any kind of front-end work with a website, and I'm going to use Bootstrap a lot, right, for Express, and we're going to talk about Express and EJS a little bit today as well. I'm going to be using those kind of things, all the stuff that they're going to go. All the front-end stuff is going to go into scripts lib. Okay, I don't have a scripts lib. Let's just create one. So I'm going to go to the top here where it says on my project. Make sure that I'm not clicked in anywhere in here, and then click a new folder that I'm going to call. And again, there's different approaches here, but I want you to do scripts lib. Scripts. Sorry, and then right-click and new folder. I'll do again lib, another folder inside the scripts folder. So now we have a very flat structure, and this structure will change. We're going to evolve this structure as we go, because right now this structure will work on Node files as well as even regular index like HTML type files or PHP files. This structure is okay, right, so far. Okay, the other thing we're missing here for CSS is I want a content folder. So I'm going to say new folder, and any kind of CSS I'm going to put in my content folder, right? I don't have any CSS yet, but if I do, it's going to go there, right? Now, scripts and content, this is something to note, right? Scripts and content. They're going to be the public face of my website. So that's my view in the whole model view controller separation of concerns, right? So I have model view controller. We're doing that with Node, right? And the model would be, if I'm accessing things like MongoDB, which we're going to be doing in the future, we're going to create a model for that. If I have my logic, my controller, that's all the back-end stuff that we're talking about here. And the view would be the web pages that we're going to be serving out, right? So typically what we would do is split out the web stuff, the front-end stuff, into a public folder, right? A public folder. And then we're going to have scripts and content inside that public folder. We're not going to do that today, but you might see another structure that I'm going to show you in the future where I break it out into server and then public or something like that, or client, server, one of the two. You might see that structure. And in the book, if you follow the book, they do that. They break it out into this different hierarchy, right, in terms of structure. For next week, this is going to affect what I'm going to be requiring for you for next week, because we're going to be talking about the building an Express app and all that's required. Okay. Okay, cool. So we've got this, right, and everything's working. I'm still not really finished. I want to right-click here, and I'm going to open in Terminal, or on PC, it's going to be on command prompt. So open in Terminal, and it comes up, and you're going to see the command prompt for you. This swims right to the place exactly where my files are. And what I want to do here is two things. I want to do an npm init. That's the first thing I want to do, npm init. And it's going to ask me for the name of my project, and I want to put it all in lowercase. So COMP2068, and it's going to be less than 3. All in lowercase. And I'm going to press enter, 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 enter for the rest. Okay. What this does, this little wizard, is it creates this package.json file. So whenever I include additional npm packages in here, it knows where to find them, right? So I need this piece. Are you with me? All right. Yeah, you good?
The Bower RC file.
Bower RC, thank you. Bower RC looks like this. You just type a Bower RC file and you just put that stuff in there. You good? Anything you haven't seen yet? Should be all stuff you've seen before, right? It's all review. Okay, so we've got this stuff. I need to do one more. I need to do another init, which is the Bower init. So I'm going to go back to here, right? And I'm going to do another little wizard. We're going to call it a Bower init. This is assuming that Bower is installed in your system. And I'm just going to press enter, 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 enter here too as well. Why not? Just to keep it nice and simple. Yay, all looks good. And so now we get a Bower.json file, right? Bower.json looks like this, right? Package.json looks like this. Okay? And now we're going to start installing some modules. And the modules we need are Node right now and Express. We're going to add those two modules because we're talking about Express today. So let's clear the screen. It's clear for Mac users and CLS for Windows users. Clear. And if I go here and I type in, I want to add in some stuff. I'm going to go npm install, right, Express. That's what I want in there first. I want to do that thing. And I want to do it -- save. Okay, please don't don't remember to do that. So there's Express. It's going to go through, and it's going to install a version of Express inside a Node modules folder, which is right here. right? And it's also going to update your packages.json file, package.json, with an Express, the latest Express version. That's what it's going to do. So it's a new module that we're adding in, right? Okay, so there's Express. On the TSD side now, we need some code hinting for Node and Express. If we don't have code hinting for Node and Express, kind of SOL, right? Can't do much without it, right? So let's try this out. So I'm going to go back here, clear the screen. And that, I mean, I've just showed you how to use just install another file. And again, this file goes into the Node modules folder. This is our first Node module, Express. We haven't really talked about it too much, but we will. Okay, cool. In here, I'm going to use TSD, and you have to have TSD installed. And remember, the command to install TSD is npm install TSD -g --save, or whatever it is, right? Or no, just -g. Okay, and let's add in, instead of npm, we're going to go TSD install node --save. And what this is going to do is going to go out to the web, grab the latest type definition files for Node, and slap them into a typings folder, which is right here. Cool. All right, one more. TSD install Express, right? --save. So it's going to go out and find Express.js and grab it and some other stuff too, and throw it inside there as some additional stuff we need. Okay, so we got Node, we have Express, right? And we have the typings for both. Notice under typings now, I have quite a few of them. I have Express, MIME, Node, serve static, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay. I want to make a simple web server, right? Simple web server, just like we did last time, and I want to deploy it on Azure. These are the steps. We're still working to try and just review all these steps. We're kind of doing the whole front to front, kind of end-to-end process here. Let's do this thing, right? Okay, remember that if I want to deploy something and I want to create my, the way I want to do it is going to be inside my server TS file, right? So here's my server TS file. Here it is. In my server TS file, right, I need to require HTTP, which is the HTTP module for Node. Now let's go and review Node a little bit before we do that. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to go to Node.js. Okay, and this is where we look for some of this stuff. I go to docs for Node.js, right? Node.js, again, there's different versions of the documentation, right? I can definitely look at version 5.5. That's the API that we want to look at because they're most likely in line with this one, right? It talks about a bunch of different things. What I want to use is HTTP, the HTTP module that's part of Node.js. And if you notice, there is a definition of what the HTTP module does and the messages we get. We have HTTP agent, the get option, and so on. But what I want to do is I want to require HTTP just like this. Notice how, and I hate to say this, we're using ES6 here. When I have the const keyword, when I see a const keyword, is there a const keyword in JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript? No. There is no constants in vanilla JavaScript. Not ES5, ECMAScript 5, the old version, JavaScript 5. There is no const keyword. This is ECMAScript 6. Now, which means we have to avoid using const if we want to keep compatible across the board. We're going to use TypeScript, and we're going to use the import statements. We're going to say import HTTP equals require HTTP. That's what we're going to do it. But before that, to set us up properly, one thing we're missing here in our root folder is and I like to do this, a reference.ts file that I'm going to refer everything else to. All right, so let's do that. So I'm going to go into the root of my folder here, right-click, and new file, and I'm going to call this new file _reference.ts. And this reference.ts file, all it's going to be is a reference to the references. Why? I can add my own. I can build my own libraries this way, and I don't mess up the reference file that I get from TSD. I want to keep that separate. All right, so what do I mean by that? So I'm going to say, remember to create a reference for your for TypeScript and type definition files, you need // and then in angle braces or angle brackets, it's reference path, if I can spell, equals to, and then where I'm looking for is inside my typings, there's a file called tsd.d.ts. I want to refer to that file. So it's going to be there. So it's going to be inside typings. There's going to be a file that's called tsd.d.ts. And I'm creating this reference so that way I'll create another reference to this reference file, so I don't have to, and here I'm going to have all my custom code is going to be right in here. If I write a custom class or something else, I'm going to write it right here in my reference file, right? I don't want to, and we may not get to that until the second half of the course, by the way, but I'm prepping you. I want you to get the structure going in order for you to have all this going, as opposed to introducing it later on at the last part of the course when it's too much for you, right? Because you have other assignments going on, there's other stuff happening, and then I'm teaching you this stuff and it's crazy, right? All right, so I save that. I've got my reference path. I've got to reference my reference file. Let's do that. So I go into my server.ts, and before I start typing one piece of code, I want to reference my reference file. So I'm going to say angle bracket reference path equals to, and this is easy, underscore reference.ts close bracket. Notice that it's in the same root area that my server.ts file is, so I don't have to swim through other folders to get to it, right? So this is the only reference that you're going to see at the top of my server.ts file. I don't have a list of references like you might get if you're using TypeScript. If you ever use TypeScript to build an enterprise scale application or a crazy game like I've done, sometimes you get a huge bunch of references at the top because they refer to all the external modules that you're using, right? I don't want that. It's too messy, so that's why I've gone to this structure. All right, I need to transpile now. So I'm going to transpile my code just to make sure that everything is set, and it creates a few extra files for me, which is cool. And inside my server TS now, I'm going to do my first piece of code. Now, what is the code? I just said it. What code do I need to put in to include HTTP, my HTTP server in my code? How do I do that? Do you remember? We did it last week. No one remember? Huh? Import. Yes. So I use my import, and I say by the name of my variable. So instead of var, I'm going to use import, and I'm going to use import HTTP is equal to require. We're going to use the require keyword, and in HTTP is what we're going to require. Okay. So what this does is it says, hey, you know what? My HTTP here, right, is going to import or take all it's going to become an object, right, that represents this module, right? So now HTTP has all the code hinting that I need. If I go HTTP dot, and if I do that next line, let's HTTP dot like this, you notice that I have all kinds of stuff here that gives me the code hinting, and that's what I want for Node. Otherwise, you get zero code hinting, ladies and gentlemen, across any other IDE, which is a pain in the ass if you're programming on the web. Just nuts, right? And everybody does it daily, like everyone across the board. Unless they use TypeScript, they do it with no code hinting. They just have to do it out of their head, I guess, right? Which is insane. Okay, so let's remember how we do that. So if I go back here, notice how there's some options here. We're not going to use all this because I'm not creating an agent, right? But one of the ones we want to do is we're going to create this HTTP server. So again, here's where you get a lot of the documentation we're going to use for today under Node. And it tells you all the different things you can do with HTTP. Like for example, if I want to create server, I want to search down for create server. I mean, I can certainly search for it. If I go, Command or Control F, and I go server, somewhere down here, right? There's lots of things like that. So if I say create server, there it is. Here's an example of how we can create a server, right? So in this case, they're calling it Proxy. And I'm going to do this request response like we did before. This is ES6 again. It's written in ES6 with a write head and some kind of message that we're going to send back. I want this pattern. That's what I want. I want this pattern for sure. But I also want to listen on a particular server on a port. And if you notice, we're using here port 1337. This should be very familiar to you if you've seen it last week, right? So I don't want to do it like this. And I've got to be careful not to use fat arrow functions. Because fat arrow functions are cool for me, we're good, but they're not backwards compatible at all for all servers. So please be careful with this thing. Okay, so how do I do this? So I'm going to call this thing server is equal to not proxy. Server is equal to HTTP, create server, and then request response, and then the write head, and then guess what I'm going to do here. So let's do that. So var server then, my server is equal to an HTTP.createServer, right? notice that if I don't know what it's listening for, it needs an object that takes in a request response. So it's an anonymous function. Here's your anonymous functions, Ari, right? In line, right? Here's your callback function that we need. We need to do a callback function, right? And inside the callback function, we're going to listen for a request, which is going to be a server. If I go server request, right? And we're going to talk about this in a second. Request response, right? That's what it's going to be in here, right? So that's what I need. Notice that server is HTTP server, right? That's what it is. So if I go here and I type in HTTP, dot, response, because that's what I want, right? Server request. That's what it is. And this one, the type, is HTTP dot server response. Sorry, I know I'm going to take too much space here. That's the type, and I'm gonna kill this space here so you can see it all. There it is. So all I'm saying here is the REQ parameter is a short form of HTTP server request and HTTP server response. That's what I'm doing. Is this correct? Notice how my server itself is considered an HTTP server if I hover over it, right? Because I'm making it equal to this HTTP create server. I could do that. I could just say it's of type HTTP.server. I could be explicit. Notice what it was doing before. It was using type inference to determine the type, because whatever I assign to an object, right, in JavaScript or in TypeScript, it uses that assignment, the assignment operator, to determine the type of object that I'm making, right? So I'm making a server type object, and it's of type HTTP server. I could do it explicitly here, or I can use type inference to do it. I like doing it explicitly so you can see the type, but it makes for a much longer statement, like this. So how do I break this up to make it more palatable? Because it's pretty long, right? Like this line is really long, right? Well, some people, what you might see is where they break it up so that they stop the the parentheses here, and then in the function part, they just do one of these. Right? That's totally legal. I mean, JavaScript, TypeScript doesn't really care how you split up the white space. As long as you don't have a semicolon, you're good to go, and as long as it makes sense. So I'm putting it like this only to save space, not because I need to, right? I mean, you can certainly put it like lengthwise like this. Okay, cool. In here, I'm going to make my response. So this is the next piece. So inside my curly braces, notice now I'm inside the object, the anonymous object here, right? Could I write this function as a named function? Yes, I can. It makes no sense. Why would I do that? But I could, right? I'm not going to. But inside here, what I want to do is I want to say response.writeHead. Right, here's my writeHead. And now it's going to ask me for two things. One is the status code, and then some other kind of callback if I want to, right? So some other kind of callback. And what I want is kind of the header. That's what I want. I want to kind of send back headers that say what kind of headers I'm getting back, right? So who remembers what I put in here? So 200 is the proper response if I respond properly. And what's the header? It's inside of an object.
Content type, text,
So how would I type that? In single braces, single quotes, double quotes? Does it matter?
doesn't matter. It's inside mustache bracket, content dash type colon.
With quotations or without quotations?
With
Okay, so let's look at the documentation. Content type, single quotes, right? And just copy that right there. Text plain. If I'm returning text plain, which I will be, so I'm just going to take all this. There it is. So content type. I'm writing a header back to the file. So my HTTP response is going to have this header. I need that. That's one of the requirements I have in order for me to write. If I don't write a proper header, sometimes you might get the wrong response. Okay, so again, I'm building a server from scratch here. That's what I'm doing, right? Okay, cool. Next piece. I want to response end with some kind of thing that says hello express. We don't have an express site yet, but we will, right? Actually, we just call it hello node for now because we don't have express yet. We'll change it when we go to express. Okay, there we go. Hello node. And express looks totally different than this, but I want to show you this. Okay. Okay, cool. Now that I've got my response, hello node, and by the way, I can use instead of response end, right? I can send to a file, a send file, where I can send an HTML file or something else right, somewhere else. Or my view, I can display my view here with a full HTML file if I want, right? But for now, let's keep it simple. Let's do this. And then this is a recap, right? And then my server, I got to make it listen, right? I got to listen on a particular port. Now notice it says my port and or host name, where host name is optional, right? Host name is optional. So my port I want to listen on is probably something like 3000, right? And that's cool, but what happens when I go to Azure? I had a problem with this, right? We had this issue with Azure when we went to Azure. There is no port 3000. We don't want to go to a port 3000 with Azure. We want to use environment, like the other option, which is process.environment. And then that's the way we do it, right? So it's better for me to define a port variable here. An example, I would go up here, and port is going to be a new variable, which is going to be a type number. So it's going to be a number, right? And we're going to assign it to, again, it's going to be process.env. And if you notice, what's the process that I got to use? Process.env.port, if I'm not wrong. I can't remember what it is now. Or the two pipes. The double pipe is OR in JavaScript, Java, C#, a bunch of other ones, right? Or port number 3000, right? So that's what I want to put in there. Okay, cool. And now in here, instead of listening to a specific hard-coded port, I'm going to just put the port variable in, right? Because that'll suffice. Makes sense? Anybody, right? Now the reason why I'm putting this process environment port in, and again, if I hover over it to see what it is, right? It's notice it's a global process, and environment port, if it's correct, and if I check it to see what it is, right? And if I don't know what it is, if I say I forgot, what's probably the right thing to do? I mean, I could certainly Google it like this, right? Process.environment. Oh, there it is, port. If it comes up like that, that's a good indicator that it's probably right on Google, right? And it actually shows you some examples. There's tons of examples for Node everywhere, right? Process.environment port, and there's different ways to do it, but that's the way that's the correct value, right, that we want to put in there. And I'll go back. That doesn't really tell us anything there. Hold on. I want to get a good example of that. Here it is, process.env, which is environment port or 3000, which means, like it says here, whatever is the environment variable port or 3000. And the reason why we're using the environment variable port is because when we deploy to Azure, we're going to use port 80, right? We want to use the standard web port, not port 3000 like we're doing when we test locally, right? Okay, so that's why we're doing it. Okay, so let's go back here. And we've got this piece, we're listening to the port. I think we're ready to start. And what I could also do here in port, I could create a callback function to produce some kind of like listening on port 3000 or whatever the port is, right? So I could do that here. So I can say function, here's my callback function, anonymous function again, right? And then I could say something like console.log, right? Listening, server started, right? Listening on port, and then plus port, right? We could do that, or whatever the port number is, okay? Is this complicated for you, right? Again, there's three pieces, right? We require the module, HTTP module, that's built into Node, okay? I don't have to do anything there. I added in TSD to get my type definition library so that way it defines all the code hinting and code coloring for Node. If I don't have TSD, TypeScript, Node, I get zero code hinting, no code coloring, nothing, right? Which is crazy. I also included Express because I know we're going to use that now, well, pretty much soon. Okay, cool. Let's test it locally first. And then after I've tested it locally, we're going to create a Git repository and deploy it. That's the next step. See all the steps? Woo! Crazy, right? Let's do this thing, right? All right, so to test it locally, there is some things you can do. One of the things I like to do is I want to go and open this up, kind of open up in terminal, right? So here's my terminal. And again, I just did that by right-clicking down here. And I don't need both terminals. I just wanted this. Or you can swim to this location, wherever your files are. I can swim to that location in the operating system manually, if you like. In here, I want to do something like this. The simple command to make this work is node, right? And then server.js. If it doesn't work, or if it gives you no response like this, something's wrong. What could be wrong? Right? Notice how I didn't get anything here going on. I didn't get a listen, this port function didn't work, right? Hey, here's why. Did I transpile? No. So what did I do? I went to server.js, and what does the server.js look like right now? Like this, right? Can Node do anything with this file? No. It needs code to do something with. So that's why it's like this. I need to transpile, and that's what is a freaking issue. That's why it's good to use gulp or grunt. And in a real environment, in a professional environment, we do use those task runners and watchers because I change a file. If I want to use SCSS for my CSS as opposed to regular CSS, so I can get variables with CSS, and I want to compile from SCSS or SAS into regular CSS, I'm going to use grunt or gulp to do that. If I want to compress my JavaScript files or compress my images, right, before I launch everything, I want to use gulp or grunt to do that, or browserify, one of the three, right, to help me out with that. There's other files we can use. I'm not going to show you that right now. There's too many tools as is, right? Can you imagine? I'm going to add 3 more tools to your on top of everything. No, thank you. All right, let's go here. So again, I need to transpile. So Control Shift B or Command Shift B. It gives me my new files. And now if I go do that, and if I go Node.js, I should be able to get this server started listening on port 3000 because that's my port, right? I don't have an environment variable set, so it's going to go to port 3000. Let's test it. And to test it, I'm going to go to localhost here locally, and I'm going to go hit port 3000. And I should get hello node, right? Yay, we got a node app, right, running. Anyone not get this? Or something happened, like it didn't work, or whatever, right? Well, you're going to see it in a second. I'm going to upload to my GitHub, and you can always compare my stuff with yours. Worst case, download my stuff and make it work for you. All right, cool. So we know it works. We know it works. I'm going to stop running this thing. And by the way, another great way of using this thing is with NodeMon. NodeMon is a module that we've used before. Again, to install NodeMon in your environment, you can go npm install NodeMon -g, right? I've already done that, and if I go NodeMon here, and just by typing NodeMon by itself inside my project, it'll start my project, and it'll give me more information about, it'll watch for any changes, and anytime I change my server.js file, it'll restart my server, okay? Which is a good little tool to use. I don't need this right now, though. What I want to do is I want to create a Git repository, right? And I want to upload this to Git and auto-deploy this to Azure, right? So what do I do? What do I do to start a new Git repository or to initialize a Git repository? Please, Ari, don't answer. I know, we went through this pain this morning. What do I do to initialize a new Git repository on the command line? What is my command that I put in? God, I should have asked this question on the test. Oh yeah, I should have asked this question on the test for sure. Next week, right? No. Yeah, I want to initialize a repository on my Git repository for my project. What do I do on the command line? Cindy. Nope, it's close though. You have to use the Git command, right? So we got part of it right there. Lucy. Git init. Ding 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 ding. Lucy wins. Okay, so we're gonna git init, and it's gonna create a repository. Where is this repository stored in my project files, my project folders? Where is it stored? Can I see it? Yes. In a hidden folder called .git, right? In a hidden folder. I can't see it here. If I do an ls, I don't see the .git folder, but if I do on the Linux machine or on Mac, if I do ls -al, I see all my hidden folders, and there's the .git. Okay, you can see it there. You can also see hidden folders and files in Windows machines. You have to enable that option. Okay, cool. So I've got my .git folder. I want to stage all my files now, right? Before I commit, I need to stage them. What's the staging command? I'm going to go back to Cindy. Cindy, what's that? You said git add. Git add what? Git add dot. Dot says add everything to the stage. So when I stage something, it's like I'm ready to create a commit. I'm not quite yet ready. I need a name for the commit too, but I'm telling you which files I want to track. These are all the ones I want to track. So to do that, I say git add dot. I'm tracking everything. That's what it's saying. And because I don't have a gitignore file, which means it's tracking everything, including node files. Okay? Node modules. Do I want to track node modules? Do I want to track them? The answer is no. I don't want to track node modules ever, right? In fact, I don't have to do that with Azure. I don't have to track node modules. So what file am I missing? What file am I missing here to help me not track? So it's like almost like a do not track file. I do not track. What's the file called? It's a git something. Gitignore file, right? So I'm going to go to my up here to my my lesson here. I'm going to go up to the top to my thing here, and then inside the main root, I'm going to add in a .gitignore file. In my gitignore file, I want to include this node modules because I'm also on a Mac. I want to say .ds_store. I want to include that too. If I'm using Cloud9, I don't want to track Cloud9. C9. I don't want to have anything to do with C9 files, right? Because C9 files are coming from thing, right? And I can add other ones, Bower components, or I can even do scripts lib. I'm not going to do scripts lib for a reason because your Bower and my Bower might be different. So I'm going to leave scripts lib off for now. All right, so I'll include those. All right, I'm going to kind of save, right? So save the file, and when I do save in my gitignore, right? I've staged them. I got a bunch of stuff that I staged. Notice there's like 99 plus changes here that's showing in my files here, right? Because I'm tracking 99 plus files right now because of all these node modules, right? So how do I fix that? Because I've added git add dot, right? I've added everything, right? Can I fix it? And the answer is let's leave it as is for now, and we'll fix it after, right? Okay, so let's go. What's the next command? I want to make a commit. What's my commit message that I have to make? How do I make a commit? Command line. These are definitely questions that I might ask you on a test, especially now since you're not answering. I could. This way? Down? Here too? Like this, is this good? Is that good? You happy there? Okay. So what's the message that I put in? How do I do a git commit? How do I do that? Git commit. God, I said it. Git commit minus M for message. And then my message, initial commit. Yay! There it is. Initial commit. Okay, cool. I have that's funny. I have a gitignore file here too. I didn't add this into my last changes. I can add it here as another commit. I don't have to do a push yet. Yeah. Git commit, git space, commit space. -m space, and then in quotations, the message. And usually it's either initial commit or first commit. Those are the two conventions we use, all right, when we first set up a repository. Okay, cool. I want to stage this one to this gitignore file, and I can do it here in the tool, or I can do it on command line. And the reason why is because I just added my gitignore file before I used the git add dot, right? So let's do it on the command line again. We're doing all command today. So I'll clear. And on the command line, I'll do the same thing. I'll say git add dot. I could also specify a file like gitignore. I could do that, git add gitignore if I want to. But why? I just say git add dot. Git add dot says, hey, add everything. I'm going to do another message, git commit minus M, and I'll say added gitignore file. There we go. So I didn't have that before. Okay, cool. So I've got two commits that I'm going to populate up online now, as opposed to one, right? Okay, cool. I need to connect to a GitHub repository. I don't have one yet. That's next step. So I need to create one up on GitHub. Let's do that. So I'm going to go to GitHub. I'll just overwrite this one. Actually, I got one over here. Here. GitHub. And I want to go to Georgian. And under Georgian, I want to create a new repository. I can click the plus here or the plus here if it's not available. Let me click this plus, new repository. And I got to specify Georgian for me because I have several organizations. And inside my Georgian college, as an example, I'm going to set up a repository called COMP2068. And it's going to be called, I like to make it Winter 2016. lesson 3. And the reason for that is because I have another one probably up here called COMP2068 lesson 3, and it's an old one, right? Okay, cool. So there's my repository, my name. I don't click any of these. I leave all this the same, right? And click Create Repository. All right, this is part one part of your lab, right? If you're following along, you're getting the lab done, right? Okay, cool. Now this piece, I need to copy my remote, and it's easy to remember. I want to add a remote, which it's worded the opposite way around. Git remote add origin, which is my local repository. That's what origin stands for. And then I want to add this origin to this thing here, which is my remote to the origin. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to say git push -u for unconditional origin master. Those are the two commands I'm going to use next. Okay, so let's try this. I'm going to take this one. I'm never going to type that out if I don't have to. And then put it in here and press enter. And for this one, I might as well type it in. It's not too big. So git push -u origin master. And when I press enter, you may get, can you please log in to GitHub? Your GitHub name, username, and password. You might get that requirement, right? If you haven't set up locally so that you don't have to. And there's some steps you can take if you look it up on the web. You can set up a global configuration for your credentials for GitHub and Git, and you never have to do this again. Okay, cool. So I've pushed everything up. Let's take a look if it's there. Yay, there's that big crazy repository with a bunch of files, which, by the way, like I said to you before, we'll probably clean these up and encapsulate them inside of a server folder. I'm going to put all of these in a server folder later, right? All of them. Okay? Or some kind of config folder or something else. I want to clean this up, though. This is like a lot of configuration files here in the root, right? Okay, if that's cool, notice I have two commits. One of them is my initial commit, and the other one is my gitignore file, right? And do I have node modules? I do, because I've included them all this time around, right? So I've got all my node modules in here as well. Typically, we would disclude them, so we would include them. In my gitignore file, if I looked at my gitignore file here for a second, notice that I disclude node modules, but they're there. Well, because of the order of when I added everything, git add dot whatever. Next time I do git add dot, it's going to disclude the node modules. So don't worry about that. Okay, next. This is the order that I added them in. Next piece. I want to deploy. I want to create a deployment target for this. I want it to go to Azure, right? Now, this is where we get into lots of fun. Peoples of the world, unite, right? Because we're going to have all kinds of fun here. I'm just saying, right? Click on a new link. You may want to, and I caution you that you may want to go into, right-click here for Chrome and go into a new incognito window, right? Because it won't mess you up as much, right? In your new incognito window, put in portal.azure.com, which will ask you to sign in, and it won't know your email address or anything like that. So sign in. So, and then your password. Wait for it because it's trying to figure out what your server is. Mine's Hotmail, right? And then I'm going to put in my password, and it's going to ask me to log in with two-step authentication, which is what I have enabled, which I highly recommend for anybody who uses any kind of Hotmail, Gmail, any of that stuff. It's just safer. It's another step to verify who you are, so someone can't steal your identity as easy. By the way, it doesn't mean that they can't steal your identity, just not as easy, right? So especially if you do banking with your Hotmail, Gmail, whatever account, be careful and have two-step authentication. That changes every minute, I believe, right? Okay, cool. I log in. Now I'm in my, here I am, right? I got a deployment failure too over here. Let's kill this. Okay, let's do, remember how I did it last week? I have to click, and here's where people run into trouble. Try this out, guys and girls. I click plus to add in a new container for my web app that I'm going to create right now, a new container. I'm going to click web and mobile. I'm going to click web app. When you click web app, if you see sign up, something is not right. Huh?
So if we can do this without going into incognito, do we
I'm okay if you can do it without incognito, right? But if you go into incognito and you see sign up, right, and you're logged in with your Microsoft account like I am, and there's you see sign up, something's wrong. And you know what? Your sign up might be gone, right? It's happened for whatever reason last week. There's people who signed up, have to re-sign up today. So you may have to go through that whole process. That's why I gave you the lab for tonight, to fix you. So by next week, you're ready to go with the first part of your assignment 1, right? That's why I'm doing it. All right, let's take a look at this. I want to create a new spot for my web app called COMP2068, and it's going to be lesson 3. Hopefully there's nothing like that up there. There isn't. And I'm going to you won't see pay as you go. You'll see DreamSpark if things are working for you. Okay, and I'm going to click create, and you won't see like trial. If you see a trial or dreams or something else other than DreamSpark, you didn't do something right. Okay, cool. So I'm deploying this target, and it's just a target web app. And when I'm done, right, this is the whole process for your lab 1 and for your assignment 1, part 1, right? Whole process right here, right? Minus other things you have to add in, right? By the way, I've done this before last semester, and it was a disaster, right? No one could do it. Just saying, right? So that's why I'm doing it again and again for you guys, right? So you see, I know you're sticking your tongue up, but it's true. It's really true. I swear to God. Huh?
I'm just waiting for this to deploy.
Oh yeah, it's taking its time, right? It's taking its sweet time. Who does not have access to Azure anymore for some reason?
They haven't gone back to my ID.
Where?
So can I use Heroku?
You can use Heroku, you can use Azure, you can use whatever you want. I'm showing you Azure because my deployment target's going to be Azure for today. But if you want to use Heroku, I might do a Heroku deployment too, just for you, right? I'll just show you that part again, right? Why not? It's going to take me another 2 seconds to do, right? Okay, thank you for that. So I've got my lesson deployed on AzureWebsites.net, COMP2068-lesson 3 Azure Websites. This is one of the pieces I need right here, but it's not working yet. There's nothing in here yet. I have to do a deployment from GitHub. So I need to go to Publishing. I need to go to Continuous Deployment. I'm going to click Configure Settings. I'm going to choose GitHub. And under GitHub, it's going to give me some stuff. I don't want to choose my personal account. I want to use Georgian. And I want to click on this new project, COMP2068 Winter 2016 Lesson 3, as my deployment target. Right? And then my master branch. And you remember, for branches, you can have multiple subfolders that you can use for your application, right? So you can have different branches, or I can march on with my application with one kind of in one direction and then take another direction with another branch, like change my application. All right, let's press OK. And when I do that, if everything goes well, it's going to look at GitHub, take the files from GitHub, and shove them over into my deployment space on Azure, right? It's going to dump it in there, and if everything goes well, if you wait for it here, it's going to spin. You're going to see the spinning thing going on. There you go. That spinny thing is saying, hey, we're fetching everything from GitHub, right? The spinny thing, yeah. And then once the spinny thing happens to finish, right, you're going to see how we're going to get everything here deployed to Azure from GitHub. Okay. Now that's step 1. After this is the first thing we have to do. Our second thing we have to do in Azure. The next step is actually testing our site. We need to test the site, guys. It's deployed, but maybe it doesn't work. Test it, right? Because if it doesn't work properly, you've got to fix it. We've got to find out what the problem is. Okay, let's do it. So let me test my site now. And again, to test it, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to press Control or Command and left click to create a new an object in a new tab here. And then, hey, hello node. That's up. So we're running. We're good to go up on, up here on Azure, right? So we're good to go. All right, cool. Okay, so that's step. If you're going to do Azure, you're pretty much done. You just need this link, right? And I need my link on GitHub, right? Which is this link. If I have this link, which is actually right here, this link and the link from Azure, you upload those to Blackboard, and your Lab 2 is done for 2%, right? If you've just done what I just did, you're good to go. If you want to deploy to Heroku because Azure's not working for you, or you just don't like Azure, and you want to make your site, your Express portfolio site, which is assignment number 1, you want to use that. You want to use Heroku for that as opposed to Azure. Okay, what do? Well, I need to go to Heroku, right? I want to go to Heroku here. And when I log into Heroku, I'm not going to show you how to log in and stuff. You should know how to do that. I want to create another app. Notice how I've got a bunch of them, right? So I want to click another one. I want to make another create new app. And in my app name, I could create one, and I want to call it the same thing. It's COMP2068, Winter 2016, and it's lesson 3, all in lowercase. And then I'm going to leave everything as is and click Create App, which is going to take me to my dashboard. Here, I have a deployment link. Click Deploy. And under Deploy, I want to click GitHub. Under GitHub, notice how I have some options for GitHub. I want to kind of search for my repo. I don't want it to be my Tsidiopoulos one, my personal one. I want it to go to Georgian, right? And I want to search for this one that I just made, which is called COMP2068 Winter 2016, right? And if I think it might be in caps, COMP2068 Winter 2016, well, and search. And if I do that, I might see a couple of them that are up there. The one that I want is this one, lesson 3, and I want to click Connect. When I connect my GitHub repository to Heroku, I'm good to go, right? I'm going to enable auto deploys, right? It's done. And then I'm going to go down here and deploy it manually for the first time. So I'm going to click Deploy Branch. So it's going to go out, do its little deployment dance, right? And then when it's deployed, it's going to take the stuff from GitHub, throw it into our container here on Heroku, and if everything goes well, and sometimes, I'll be honest with you, Heroku's a little bit finicky, eh? Sometimes it works, just like I just did, and you can do the exact same steps and it won't work for you. Let's check it out and see if it works this time. Phew, right? And wait for it. It shouldn't take this long, typically, right? I'm just showing you because I know I've had some challenges with Heroku in the past when it comes to small apps like Node or whatever, right? And if it doesn't work for you, there's ways to fix it. I'm not going to go into it right now, but the way to fix it, of course, is to look and see what the logs say from Heroku, and the Heroku logs will actually tell you what the problem is, right? This isn't going to work because it's taking way too long. Or I'm rushing the deployment, huh? Did yours work?
Mine.
Yeah, Heroku. Anyone try Heroku?
No, I'm not sure.
Just watching me? Come on, I thought you were just doing it. What the hell? Can you try Heroku? He was like, sure, I'll do it. And he was like, yeah, I'm just watching it. I'm not really doing it. You know.
No, I missed a step earlier, so we have to rewatch it.
All right. So anyway, so this is the step for Heroku. Notice again that it's not launching. Sometimes what it is, and again it says deploy to Heroku done. Your app was successfully deployed, but I can't see it, right? I can't see it. And sometimes it's because I need a proc file. That's one of the things that I need sometimes, a proc file. And the proc file tells Heroku that I'm running a Node app, right, as opposed to something else. And that's sometimes required. There's some configuration on the front end to tell Heroku what kind of app I'm building, right? And we'll go into that another day. But that's really the steps. I'm going to stop now, take a short break for 10 minutes, get some coffee, do a bio break, have a smoke, call your loved ones, whatever. And then we'll come back, right, and we'll continue with this craziness.
I was calling my